I think it's live.
It's live now.
We are live.
We're
Welcome
live.
to
Woo!
Red Hoop Talk. I'm Roy.
Should we call ourselves Blue Hoop Talk today?
I kind of figured you might go in that direction. I did wear my blue shirt for
I'm wearing
you.
my blue. We got blue on today.
This is my blue sister Shannon, who's not blue. She is one happy camper. All of her yard signs worked, guys. You guys flipped 2 states with Shannon's yard signs.
That's right. That's right. We covered the neighborhoods regardless, and our signs. It wasn't just the yard signs. It was those big old poster boards, right?
Yeah, you had billboards.
Big old billboards. All right, let's get back to before we go here. Let's
Yes, you're so excited already.
I have to calm down. I have to take a breath. So, halito, everyone. I'm Shannon O'Loughlin. I am a co-host here on Red Hoop Talk with this guy over here.
Roy Melendez, Cato Adeas from Louisiana.
My Cato brother, and I'm Choctaw from Oklahoma, and we're co-host for Red Hoop Talk, which is a native news and talk show produced by the Association on American Indian Affairs. And I'm coming to you from the original homelands of the Piscataway peoples.
And I'm coming to you from the Serrano peoples today. Gosh, there's so many Californian tribes. I mean, it's just like insane.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of them.
So, and I'm grateful to be something else today. Is everyone else something else today?
Let's hear it, Shannon. Go ahead.
No, did you hear what they did on CNN? The whole something else. They lumped Native Americans into this category called something else. I can bring up the picture, but I'm sure our folks in our chat room have seen it too. What did you all think about the CNN categories, including something else? We're seeing Lance and JD. Nice to see you here. Sarah, nice to see you.
Hey,
let us know.
Room.
Let us know where you're coming from and what tribe you're affiliated with, if you are affiliated with the tribe. And we're glad y'all are here. We're glad to be here, even though nothing has changed. Everything has changed. And we've got a great guest tonight we're looking forward to speaking with. So let me shut up so I can catch my breath. We've got a little sage burning here. Roy, tell us about your week.
My week? Well, it's been nothing but election is what it's been. I mean, I was at my 92-year-old grandfather's house all week and sat down and watched the election with him.
Oh, yeah.
But it was just, I'm getting some echo.
Are you? I'm not. I don't hear it from you. No.
I hear it. I don't know what that is. But anyway, yeah, so I was with him and we watched the election and we went to bed and watched it again. And then we went to bed and watched it again. And we've been doing that until, I guess, last night, right? Was when we finally got word that it was officially called by one side anyway. I guess the other side's not calling it yet. Is that what we're hearing?
They'll call it whatever they will. But that doesn't change what it is. And one thing that I was waited for, I was so grateful that the announcement came Saturday, because then it made me even want to watch Saturday Night Live even more. Saturday Night with Dave Chappelle and the Foo Fighters. It was awesome, by the way. You've got to, even if you don't watch SNL, that's the one thing to watch. It was a really hilarious, especially Chappelle, who's on there. I love him.
Lance said something else was Custer's last words. No, I think his last words were "Ah!"
Oh, Roy. Remember how we talked about neither one of us had a good, sense of humor?
No, we don't. No sense of timing. It's timing. The humor. We're funny. It's the timing. comedy's about timing, and our timing is horrible.
Our
Yours is
timing-
worse than mine, but mine's bad too.
Mine's pretty bad, but that alone makes it kind of funny.
I guess.
Yeah, whatever. Nobody's, you can see nobody in the chat room is saying anything about that. In fact, no one in the chat room has ever said we're funny. Have you?
Looking. I've seen that.
Looking? No, see, Jim says this is a funny show.
Okay.
So if that means something's funny about it,
Yeah.
it may not be
Funny,
us.
ha or funny,
Listen, Roy, I am not prepared to talk about anything substantive off the cuff right now. I would prefer to just head right to our guest, but what do you think?
Well, first, I
Okay.
want to give everybody. So Shannon has not only did she create a flip because of all of her signs, but she's also been posting on social media all of her excitement. So I wanted to show somebody some of her social media stuff that she's been posting.
Oh no.
Uh-huh. So this was one of Shannon's social media posts, and there's a lot more. I was really getting a kick out of your social. Did you watch any TikTok this week?
I haven't watched any TikTok. Have you?
Oh my gosh, it's like the most amazing thing right now. TikTok is like, and native TikTok is getting really popular with like mainstream people, are like everyone jumping onto native TikTok because it's getting real popular.
You know why? Well, TikTok's actually promoting this wonderful month. We're in Native American Heritage Month. So we're all ambassadors for Native America this month.
Yes.
I did a call earlier today with the Daughters of the American Revolution. I gave them a little 15-20 minute spiel about why it's important to support Indigenous people's rights, and I'm sure all of us, if anyone's got any special plans for Native American heritage, or people are reaching out asking them to educate the masses about Indians, let us know. It's always interesting to see where those inquiries come from. Oh, look, someone's from Australia.
Oh, we have Australian in here.
Hey. Someone from Australia who's part Cherokee. Man, that princess got far, didn't she? Oh, I'm kidding. We kid around here.
We do. Well, my grandmother was a white princess.
Okay.
She was my great grandmother. My great grandmother was a white princess. See, I told you timing. It's all about timing.
Well, Jim, hey, Jim Diamond is a friend of mine and our guest tonight. Jim, the conference was excellent. If anyone's asking about the repatriation conference that was a week ago or so, we had about 730 registered participants, about 100 experts who were doing panels over 3 days. It was incredible. We're going to have some more webinars. So, keep your ears open for announcements from the association. I'm going to get to speak with Suzanne Harjo and James Wrightington on November the 16th at ASU through a virtual webinar about NAGPRA at 30. So look out for that. What else is going on? So it went really well, Jim. Thanks for asking. Oh, look, Tweety says we're way too funny. Ha, ha, ha. Unless you say it without any, she didn't put a exclamation mark or a question mark at the end. So you just read it. Ha, ha, ha. Way too funny. Or read it like a Stoic Indian. Read it like a Stoic Indian. Ha, ha, ha. Way too funny. You could do that better than me.
Way
See,
too funny.
I'm not on cue today at all.
All right. Well, then we probably should bring our guest up then, because it's.
And it's because
there's one last thing that was on your social media. It says, "Why can't Trump go to the White House anymore? Because it's for Biden."
Huh?
I get it. I get it. I get it.
See, someone's got a good sense of humor there. But
All right.
okay. Are we done? Are we done? Does anyone have any questions? Can we go on to our guest?
Yes. Please
All right.
do. Please introduce our guest.
Okay, I will. And I'll let him talk more about himself. But I'm proud and happy to have with us tonight Mr. Gabe Galanda. Bring him up. Mr. Gabe Galanda, he is one of the smartest attorneys that I know. Can you push the button and get him up here?
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, oh, here.
There he is.
There he is, because I want him to
Gabe,
see me
what's
say
up?
this. I actually said on last week's show, Gabe, that you were smarter than me. And Roy couldn't believe I said anything like that. But you are the smartest attorney I know. You've been on like the best lawyers in America forever. Like since he was born, he's been one of the best lawyers in America. He is a managing partner at Galanda Broadman in Seattle. Gabe's from the Round Valley Indian Tribes. I've always known him to be full of big heart, full of humor, and full of love. So glad to have you with us, Gabe. And oh, by the way, he graduated a year before I did in law school, but I don't know, you got to be like 10 years younger than me or something. You're just a baby.
Hi, Shannon. Great to be here. Thoroughly embarrassed now as we start the show. Nice to meet you too, Roy.
It's nice to meet you.
I'm excited to be here with you both.
We are too. Okay, I'll calm down now and be serious. So, Gabe, so tell us about yourself. You're in Seattle. Your tribe's from California, right?
Yep.
And they're, I think, smaller tribes, right? Not too many people may know about your tribes. Do you want to kind of start about
Sure.
who you are with that?
Yeah, so I belong to the Round Valley Indian Tribes, or the Round Valley Indian Confederation, in Mendocino County. Home is a small town off of a windy road off of Highway 101 called Covelo. And my great grandma was an original Alati there in the late 1800s. And she belonged to two of the tribes or bands that were confederated into that valley, which, much like a lot of other reservations, was a concentration camp. And it was predicted that the tribes that were brought there would not survive there, but we're still here nonetheless. My great grandma gave birth to my grandma, who in the 19 teens and 20s and 30s went to a boarding school in Riverside, California, which is south from Covelo by a good amount, especially for someone who's, a young girl. She went with her brother on a train, and they succeeded actually at Sherman Institute for Indians. She became a nurse in the military. He became a print pressman, but that had the effect of basically displacing my family from our reservation for a couple generations. She ended up living closer to the reservation, but not still on the reservation, in Santa Rosa, California, where she gave birth to my mom and her two sisters. But then her and my grandpa decided to retire west of Seattle, meaning now some 1,000 miles away from California, in a valley called Dungeness, in a town called Sequim. And that's around the parts where I was born in the 1970s. I won't say what year. And I then was born and raised on the North Olympic Peninsula, which is about a couple hours by boat and car west of Seattle. Went to a community college there after high school for 2 years. And during which time I practiced. I didn't practice. I was a receptionist, I guess, practicing answering the phone at a law firm. And that's when I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I then went to Western Washington University in Bellingham, near the Canadian border, for 2 years, got a degree in English. At that point, I certainly know I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I applied to our alma mater, the University of Arizona College of Law, and ended up going to law school there. Spent 3 of the best years of my life down there, meeting people like you and many other spectacular people, learning from the brightest minds in our profession. And in 2000, I came back to the Northwest and made my home here in Seattle, where I've been for the last 20 years. I started my career at a regional law firm. I was there for 10 years. And then 10 years ago, this past April, meaning April of 2010, I started Galanda Broadman with my best friend, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. And you represent their tribal businesses, tribal governments, but also individual Indians as well, right?
Yeah. For the first part of my career in Indian law, which probably started around 2004 or 5, the first few years of my career were just focused on learning how to lawyer, and I represented a lot of big firm clients in litigation defense. But around 04, 05, and then ever since, I've been privileged to represent tribal nations and their enterprises, agencies, and instrumentalities. But coinciding with the beginning of our law firm in 2010, I started getting phone calls from tribal members, from relatives, and ever since then, we've been representing individuals as well, meaning not just nations and enterprises and agencies, but individuals. And now that represents a great percentage of our work.
Which is, I find that truly special, because many attorneys who are working in Indian country are working on more corporate or government entity type of representation. And there's especially, I could be absolutely wrong. You probably know who each one of the attorneys who represents individual Indians in the type of work that you do more than I do. But it seems like there's very few of us who are Indian attorneys who are native, who represent the people. We're always, and probably because that's not where the money is. So most of us lawyers with firms, we go to where people can pay and afford attorneys, right? You're special like that. I don't know how you do it, but you're a fabulous lawyer, and I really commend you for representing the people on issues that are very controversial with tribal governments. Wow, should we go right into it?
Sure. And thank you.
Yeah. So I know you've done a lot of work on prisoners' rights, on Native American prisoners' rights, and the right to be who they are, to practice ceremony and do other things. But you also work with individual Indians who have been disenrolled from their tribes, and some cases in particular that are in your area. Do you want to talk about any of that, or can you talk about any of that?
Yeah. I mean, let's come back to the prisoners' rights stuff, because that's near and dear to me. But for the last 8 years, we've represented over 1,000 individual Indigenous persons who have been disenrolled or disenfranchised or exiled from their own tribe, typically at the hands of tribal politicians. And honestly, it's been a gift from Creator to be able to do that work. It's transformed my beliefs, my ideology, my thinking, my legal thinking. At the same time, it's been very, very difficult. Originally, it was very emotionally difficult. It was almost traumatic to represent hundreds of tribal members at a single time who were all being, jettisoned from their own tribe for greed or for political power. And just witnessing the anguish and pain and desperation that they were enduring took its toll on me and my law firm in pretty significant ways. Since then, I've numbed a little bit to the emotion of it. Not that I've lost empathy, but I'm able to sort of cope with it a little bit better over time. But at first, it was absolutely jarring to represent them, to feel almost hopeless for them, because in these cases, democracy gets completely shut down by the politicians. They shut down political process, shut down cultural process, shut down legal process, shut down police process, whatever process may exist that we may come to know in mainstream society that would protect us from being persecuted like that just gets shut down by the politicians. And there's nowhere for them to go. There's no day in court. There's no court of public opinion on reservation. There's just no opportunity for them to grieve and be heard and to receive justice. And it was completely demoralizing to first realize that and to live that with and through them. But we've sort of adapted over the last 8 years and sort of become more accustomed to that and try to figure out, with all that said, what we could still do to accomplish justice. And we've not saved everyone. In fact, we lose more than we save, but we have saved a number of people from being disenrolled or exiled, and it's the most gratifying work I've ever done.
What would be grounds for a tribal entity to do that to their people?
Well, they claim most often that the individual or individuals were, quote unquote, erroneously enrolled. And then they look back in time and suggest somehow the family tree was incorrect, or the blood quantum was imprecise, or there was some fraud committed during an application process. But you would be mind blown to realize what our relatives are asked to do to prove they belong. Now, keep in mind, they may have 2 to 4 weeks to figure out where their great grandma was in the late 1800s, or where their grandma was in the early 1900s, who gave birth to who was born by whom. We used to joke with one group of clients that they needed to find the magic unicorn, which was some birth certificate that their great grandma, would have received upon birth in the late 1800s, during a time when, as we all know, women weren't even considered citizens, and state and local government were rather young and probably not generating a lot of vital records at the time. And if you were certainly a woman or a baby, there definitely weren't records being generated about you at that time. So we joked the magic unicorn. In 30 days' time, they needed to find a birth certificate circa 1880 to prove that they are who they believe they were in 2016, and it's just not possible. But that's what these politicians force our relatives to do. And I would submit to any one of us, if that's what we're asked to do to prove we belong, meaning go back to 1880 and find a birth certificate for a grandma or a relative, none of us will meet the standard of proof.
It's like nobody knows who snagged whose auntie at what 49 and what day, right? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
No, that's what I was wondering was, under what grounds. And so they try and dig up some dirt that doesn't exist, I guess, is what they do, is they try and find out, well, if we could break the tree somewhere, then we'll pull them out and just boot them from the roll.
Well, what's even more repulsive, talk about dirt that does exist. They've actually forced disenrollees, and make sure you're sitting down, to exhume their ancestors for DNA testing.
Oh.
Which the family is then forced either to be disenrolled or to do the unthinkable. And then when that happened at Redding Rancheria, and to a 99% degree of certainty, the DNA tested positive, meaning that was their great grandma or grandma, they disenrolled them anyway. So yeah, talk about digging up dirt. It's a literal and figurative truth here.
Now, obviously, like you said, it's greed and dishonest people being dishonest. But what makes today's tribal governments want to even adopt blood quantum? When, I mean, that's always been proven to be, such a tool for non-existence, basically. I mean, it's just genocide. Blood quantum is genocide of tribes. I mean, why are they adopting it? Just greed?
Well, to some extent, we've been brainwashed to think, one, that there is such a thing as Indian blood percentages, which there isn't. It's a racial fiction dating back to eugenics theory, which has been debunked, inheritance theory, which has been debunked, all these blood-based ideologies from Europe, which just don't apply to us. It's just not even a thing. But we, through colonizing influence, have come to believe that we have some percentage of the blood running through our veins, some 25% or 50% that is some degree or pedigree of Indian blood. But beyond that, it's been now foisted upon us by law and policy of the United States since at least the mid 1800s. It started in treaty. It was most predominant, obviously, during the Dawes Act in terms of how it originated there through a Dawes Commission. And then by 1934, of course, it became federal policy that an Indian of half blood living on the reservation was an Indian. And ever since, tribes have sort of shoehorned blood quantum into all of their own laws, IRA constitutions most notably, causing us to just lose sight of this entire fiction and to really believe it if it were true, number one, and if it were our own truth, number two. But you're right, statistically, it is just a question of time based on percentages that we are going to end up decimating ourselves if we subscribe to this blood quantum idea. Yeah. At some point, the decimal point will be so minuscule that we will look at ourselves or look at these percentage points and no longer believe we're Indian. Or someone else will, and they'll say, "You're not Indian enough anymore." So,
right.
So that's what that's what I don't understand, because math is math, like you just said. Math is math, and it's being blood quantums are being diluted. So no matter what, you're going to end up with a net zero one day if you continue on this path. If you continue on this, like you said, it has nothing to do with our culture. We adopted it from another culture that was, trying to cause genocide of all, because they want to get rid of native tribes. They want to get rid of Indian country. They don't want it to exist. So they use this blood quantum, and then we adopt it. And knowing the math, we continue to utilize it today. I don't understand where tribes are why they're buying into this. I don't understand it. It should have been one of the things that they've said, you know what, we've got to stop this, because if we do want our nations to flourish and develop and grow, you have to let other people in. I mean, you have to expand, not contract. Correct.
I mean, what we're talking about is we've been racialized, right, since the early 1800s by federal law and policy. At the same time, and to your point, Roy, why are we doing this? Well, we've also been monetized.
Right.
Starting with Indian payrolls in the 1790s, starting with per capita by the 1800s, not 1988, by the way. Per capita perpetuated through Dawes, Burke, Lacey Acts, perpetuated through the IRA, perpetuated through Judgment Fund Acts in the 70s, obviously perpetuated through IGRA in 1988. But Indian identity has not only been racialized for the last 200 years, it's been monetized for the last 230 years at least. Yeah. And so to answer your question, why are we doing this now when we know statistically we're going to eradicate ourselves? Well, there's a financial aspect to it. And people are subscribing to a blood quantum ideology because, candidly, there's money in Indian identity these days.
Of course.
And that has corrupted us in terms of who belongs and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, God. Yeah, that I can't believe that about forcing individuals to exhume their relatives. And I can't believe any people would allow their government to do that to them. How, what kind of support in the tribal populace of the tribes where this is happening is there for this kind of activity, or is it it's just gotten away with from the tribal government? Is there no internal protesting? Is there nothing that's happening that I'm just not sure even what an individual would do, like you said, where they would go, what system can they use to get a fair understanding of the process? Like what do they do?
Well, the first part of your point, what nation would do this? I'll tell you what nation would not do this. By analogy or analog, the United States government, because each and every one of us who are born here by virtue of the 14th Amendment and a provision of the United States Code belong here. And the courts and Supreme Court have held that the Congress, for example, the politicians in Washington, D.C., can do nothing to abridge our right to belong by birth. And I believe each and every one of us of indigenous people have the same birthright to exist to our own peoples. But to your point, or your other question, what can be done? That's the challenge. As you know, Shannon, as a lawyer, the Santa Clara Pueblo versus Martinez case stands for the broad proposition, although this is not the holding, that these are internal, delicate political matters that should not be adjudicated by courts, certainly federal courts. That's been then adapted into tribal courts under doctrine of sovereign immunity in particular, to hold that there's no jurisdiction to adjudicate these disputes unless the tribe waives its jurisdiction, waives its immunity. Well, why would the same politicians who are causing this injustice agree to be sued in their own court? Or if they have agreed to be sued by prior legislation, it is not uncommon where they will tell the judge how to rule, or fire the judge if the judge dare rule against them, or otherwise co-opt the court, which again leaves individuals with their most sacred right of birth to belong with really nowhere to go legally or judicially for right of review. So they then look to political solutions. Well, again, the tribal politicians shut down general council meetings. They shut down community council meetings. They shut down tribal council meetings to the public. They shut down then the political democratic process on reservations to perpetuate their agenda. They'll censor the newsletter. They'll censor Facebook. They'll go to any length they can to not allow even the day in court in the court of public opinion, which leaves our relatives completely desperate to do anything to hang on to their existence.
So are there any tribes experimenting or working on that are monetized, maybe using some type of a merit-based system for their enrollments? I mean, allowing people to enroll, and then maybe to somehow work themselves into or work their tribal affiliation into a position of being part of that monetization, or changing the monetization system to where it's not just going. Because I know, I have cousins in Shakopee, in the middle of Wakantan, and they just, automatically it's an issue of, their checks are given to them every month based on how many people are in the family, and so is there any tribes experimenting with doing anything else other than that type of a system?
Well, there are some tribes that are trying to figure out in terms of resource allocation, say, do we afford certain resources to those living on the reservation, but then not to those who are living off reservation? Now, the challenge with that is that creates sort of second-class citizens who perhaps for reasons not their own, like termination or relocation or assimilation, don't live on the reservation anymore. So there are sort of policy questions. Do we want to create sort of this us versus them, which already exists anyway, right? We all have this idea of res versus urban, fair complected versus dark complected. The challenge, if you start going down that path, and it's not an illegitimate conversation, how to allocate resources to those living near home versus those living away from home, but you start creating classes. So we're already racialized, we're already monetized, and now you're creating basically caste or class systems within your community that, ultimately perhaps polarize more than they unite. So
it's obvious. We've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the money makes it very, very difficult to remain indigenous about these conversations.
So are these mostly smaller tribal nations that are involved in disenrollment, or is this happening? I mean, how much is this happening across Indian country?
So 85 tribes of what, 570?
74.
So that's roughly 15% of the federally recognized tribes have disenrolled their own relatives. 15%. 10,000 individuals, by some estimates, have been disenrolled. And it's predominantly over the last 20 to 25 years, really coinciding with the insurgence of Indian gaming. Started in the late 1990s when gaming really took off, and it just continued on the same trajectory as Indian gaming over the last.
So is there literally like a zero disenrollment level before the 1990s? Do you see that in the history?
No, I've been actually tracing the origins during COVID. The first federal reference to disenrollment I can come up with came up in the early 1900s.
Oh.
Disenrollment started happening in places like Colville around termination era in the 1950s. It then happened at a federal policy during the ANCSA period, Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act of the 1970s.
Oh.
There was actually at one point a policy of the federal government to not allow any tribe to disenroll their own people unless the Secretary of Interior approved it, but that was taken out in the 1980s. But then disenrollment absolutely exploded corresponding.
Nice.
To answer your question, it's actually been around, believe it or not, about 115 years, but we really see probably 95 to 99% of it over the last 25 years.
But still correlated with monetization.
Yeah, that's a great point. The common denominator of disenrollments are per capita. And that goes back to the 1900s during Dawes, when resources are being basically prorated or per cap to individuals to assimilate us out of our own tribes. Mm-hmm. Carried forward during land settlement acts in the 1920s and 30s. In fact, you want to know why Julia Martinez of Santa Clara Martinez versus Pueblo, why her daughter was never enrolled?
Why?
Per capita. It's the most storied case of belonging in our legal history, and little do many people know that in the 1930s, around IRA time, there was a per capita controversy around Pueblo land settlement monies, and an all-male council decided that Julia Martinez, in that instance, because her dad was Navajo and her mom was Santa Clara, and they all spoke Tiwa fluently and practiced all the religions and cultures and were quote unquote full-blooded. Right. Just because she was born to a Navajo man, she didn't belong. What they were trying to do was limit the number of people who could get a per capita check, dating back to the 1930s. So to Roy, your question, this correlation has actually existed far beyond IGRA and gaming per capita. This correlation of per capita and disenrollment has existed for over a century.
Yeah, but it was always correlated with monetization.
Yep.
I want to share a website. Did you put up this website, Gabe, or was someone else involved in the Stop Disenrollment website? I want to make sure folks are aware of it.
And when I look at Indian country and the stories of family feuds or tribal government versus family, usually it's a government head and then a family, and then they get more feud. The feuding within tribes, intertribal, has been because of this monetization and disenrollment.
Yeah, greed, power, racism are all the common denominators of disenrollment. I see Jim Diamond's comment about Indipinos. You can see this with the Muskogee Cree, but there's also a racial component to this, in that there's discrimination based on phenotype or based on skin color. Right. It also plays a factor here, but it's a combination of factors that are more often than not race, power, and greed. But on Stop Disenrollment, this was actually the brainchild of Louis Gong 5 years ago. Louis Gong, as many people may know, is a Nooksack artist. He is the owner operator of the 8th Generation company, which has an office or has a storefront in Pike Place Market, manufacturing wool blankets. Brilliant artist from the Pacific Northwest who's Nooksack. And in 2012, his tribe, of course, began being ripped apart at the seams over disenrolling 306 of their 1,800 members, meaning 50% of their tribe. Louis wanted to figure out a way, and he's sort of averse to politics. He's averse to controversy because of his sort of way, and he's an artist. He wanted to figure out a way to just create an expression that said, stop. This is not our way. We can do better. We shouldn't be doing this to our own people. So he created the gesture with the palm outstretched and the idea that someone would put in their palm what disenrollment means to them or what it should not mean. And so now every year for the last 5 years, I believe in February, on an annual basis has been this Stop Disenrollment virtual advocacy campaign where hundreds and thousands of our relatives, including Shannon, have extended their palm, written into the palm of their hands with a Sharpie or on a sign what disenrollment means to them or how it hurts them or why it doesn't agree with them. And it really has had a massive effect on disenrollment, meaning it has actually helped deter disenrollment because so many of our relatives have visually said enough is enough. And I give Louis the credit and for the genius of his idea.
Yes, and it gives you a place here you can post yours. So if anyone is interested in this issue and want to participate in this movement, the website also gives you a place where you can post your poem and write your message about the issue. The more individuals that we have involved in this, speaking out and making tribal governments accountable to each and every one of their rightful citizens, and that we can come together in unity on this issue. I mean, that's what our relatives taught us to do, right? That's what my grandmother always taught us to do. You feed, you make sure everybody is taken care of, and you don't force anyone out of your door. It amazes me, partly because there's these stereotypes of who Indian people are, and that we're all environmental, we all love the earth. We take care of each other, and we do all of this, but we forget that we are suffering from historic and intergenerational trauma, and that the work of the oppressor has oppressed us, which has caused some of us to oppress others. And this is one of the ways where that oppression manifests. And I hope everyone is interested in this topic and can participate in it somehow, or look at their own tribes to see what their tribal. Do tribes have policies? Do they have laws? Like, what? Can you talk a little bit more about making sure that your tribe has set forward laws or processes appropriately to protect its people?
Yeah, and something you just said reminded me of a question one of you asked that I didn't answer. Is it big or small tribes?
No.
I'll tell you what, it's generally not treaty tribes. It's generally not large land-based tribes. It tends to be gaming tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, it tends to be restored tribes, meaning tribes that were once terminated, lost a couple generations, restored or were acknowledged in the 70s and 80s, found gaming, and then did to their own people what the United States did to them. That's the story of California Indian country in terms of the predominance of disenrollments. A lot of those are restored tribes that, of course, had treaties that were never ratified, were terminated in the 1950s, restored by Tilly Hardwick or otherwise, found gaming, and then got rid of their own relatives. That's sort of the tragedy when you say trauma and oppression and the oppressor becoming the oppressed, or the oppressed becoming the oppressor, correct me, that's what comes to mind. But in terms of laws, the cool thing, and this does coincide with like this public awareness campaign of stop disenrollment, and the publicity now associated with these disenrollments, and the shame that it has caused this practice of disenrollment. I mean, candidly, my law firm realized in 2012 we were not going to win in court more often than not. So we decided we were going to play in the court of public opinion and basically create nationally awareness of this practice, re-education of this practice, and create shame upon anyone who would consider it. Right. And we've sacrificed in the process. We've taken our lumps in the process of that. But the gratifying thing is I know there are tribes that have actually considered being shamed and chosen to keep their relatives rather than endure the bad publicity and shame that has befallen other people. Beyond that, there are other tribes that have seen the disgrace of it and say, we don't want that to become us. So if we're Spokane tribe, we're going to amend our constitution to prohibit disenrollment. For Great Rancheria, on our recognition, we're going to write into our new constitution a prohibition on disenrollment. And better yet, we're going to write in a poison pill in our compact with the state of California that says if we ever disenroll, there'll be consequences that will run in favor of the state and act to deter us from doing this to our own people.
Wow.
So there are actually tribes that have seen the disgrace other tribes have caused and have not wanted to allow their people down that path. I should say tribal leaders have seen that disgrace and not wanted that to happen to their people. And there have been some laws passed that are profound in terms of trying to cure this epidemic of disenrollment.
Now, NCAI is this week, so the National Congress of American Indians is holding its annual meeting, and I think you and a bunch of tribes and tribal organizations, including the Association on American Indian Affairs, are bringing a resolution before NCAI. Can you talk a little bit about that, or what you know about it, if you can?
Yeah, so there's a resolution that is being sponsored in chief by Chairman Ron Allen, former NCAI president and current chairman of the Jamestown Squaxin Tribe, as well as his tribe, Jamestown, that would create a task force within NCAI for tribal citizenship protection. But more important than that, it would affirm for the first time in NCAI's 76-year history that tribal citizenship and indigenous belonging are fundamental rights. Can you believe that? Pause and think about that. For 76 years, the frontline institution that has defended our existence and Native nationhood as we know it has never resolved to support the sort of companion right, or the other side of the nationhood coin, which is citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're hoping is this week they will entertain this resolution, which importantly does not tell any tribe how to decide who belongs, or not tell any tribe that to don't tell people they don't belong. It's not telling tribes to do anything other than how they're going to do it. To cast no judgment on decisions they've made or judgments they will make in terms of who belong or who doesn't. It basically says, however, we need a conversation intertribally through NCAI and others about these issues, these existential issues of citizenship and belonging and blood quantum and kinship. Because as we're talking about, they can get the better of us collectively. And until there's conversation, there could be more controversy and more problem. But that conversation has not happened, and that in part has contributed to why some of these tribes perhaps have strayed. There just hasn't been a lot of dialogue and education and awareness about these issues. As I've said, on some level, we're brainwashed to think these are our ways. I mean, after several generations and law upon law upon law for 2 centuries or more, telling you are something that you're not, you might just start to believe that you're something that you're not or you weren't. And candidly, I think that's kind of where we are, and we need to reset and have a conversation led by our leaders that will allow us to open up chains of communication and ideas and exploration and re-education before we head down a path that we don't want to head down any further. But yeah, in addition to Jamestown, 8 other Native nations from Alaska to Washington to California to Arizona to Oklahoma have signed on in support. Your organization, Great Plains Chairman's Association, several other international or intertribal organizations have supported us. And we're just hopeful that the conversation at a minimum will happen this week. And maybe
Gabe, watch out. They're coming for you.
Will happen beyond this week.
Yeah. Damn, I remember when you first started talking about these issues, Gabe, and I remember people were freaking out. For so long in law school, we'd learned about tribal sovereignty, tribal nation governments, and that we were kind of sent off on our way to protect those things, and that tribal governments have inherent sovereignty that we have to protect above all else, that they're sovereign and they make the decisions however they're going to make their decisions. And we never once talked about individual human rights within those nations. We've talked about our collective rights under the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We've talked about other communal rights, but we never talked about our own individual people who make up those tribes, who elect those tribal leaders. And it was really brave, I think, for you to step out there because you were, I think, punched and probably still are on these types of issues, because it kind of threatens the very thing that we have always been saying that we needed to protect, which was the tribal nation and the tribal nation government. And this kind of, I don't know, gives it a black eye.
Who's protecting the individual within that entity is really the question.
Yeah.
When that entity becomes I guess for a lack of a better word, corrupt.
Well, and I think part of the fear is if you start attacking the tribal government for its bad acts, that we're going to lose our sovereignty. We're going to lose our nationhood. So, I mean, how have you been able to kind of balance that? And also, I mean, have people had that fear?
Yeah, I mean, that was my conventional thinking until I started getting calls in 2012 from disenrollees, which is this is the tribal prerogative. Santa Clara Pueblo versus Martinez says so.
Right.
Who are any of us to question that prerogative? But then I had representatives of 306 Nooksack Indians, meaning 3 different family lines within a family of 306, sit right over here at a kitchen table and tell me what was happening to them. And I'm looking at these folks and I'm like, these are some skins right here. And for anyone to tell them they don't belong is ludicrous. I mean, they were like fighting with each other right at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
I'm like, these guys are so tribal. Like, what about them is not tribal? Like just talking with them, listening to them. I was like, there's no question they belong. And so they showed me their tree and they showed me their papers and we talked things through. And I'm like, well, let's go. This doesn't feel right. And the rest is sort of history, but I call it a gift really from Creator because it's caused me to have to rethink everything. Like, what is a tribe if not the people? What is a nation if not the citizenry?
Right.
I mean, the great many of our tribal names, meaning the traditional name of our tribes, translates to the people for a reason. We were people, not nations. We were kinship societies, not governments. We were kin, not citizens. We've been transformed for the last couple hundred years as a matter of law and federal policy and colonial influence to be things that we absolutely must be now, make no mistake about it, to survive. We must be nations and citizens to survive in this moment in history. But that doesn't mean we were always these things. But it does beg sort of philosophical questions. If not for the people, what is the nation and what is the tribe? And if a handful of politicians are going to get rid of family lines running to treaty ancestors and spiritual leaders and warriors of tribes, then really what's left in terms of the tribe? What's left in terms of the nation? If you're sort of severing those generational ties to what we are now and what we've been, since time immemorial over the course of the last several generations. And yeah, it's been controversial. We've taken our lumps. We've been fired. We've been passed over. We've been maligned. But I consider it a gift because it's transformed my entire way of thinking and practicing law and helping people.
Yeah. And I've seen it as an attorney. I have attempted to represent individual Indians or individual Indians collectively in like water rights cases and things like that. And it was very difficult to find support to do that. What I've been involved in now, especially with the Association on American Indian Affairs, is intertribal, government to government fighting and who belongs as a nation. When you look at federal acknowledgement issues, and some tribes are absolutely opposed to other tribes becoming federally acknowledged, especially if they're in the same state or may set up gaming that might compete with the other tribe. And it's really, it makes me wonder if we remember that we're those people or if we've turned into corporations.
Well, wasn't that the whole Jack Abramoff issue? Was the way they handled that was to basically screw over another tribe and benefit of another?
Right.
Yeah, he went in and took over a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same monetization of belonging that is contributing to this dynamic. I mean, we have been corrupted by capitalism. And I'm not saying we can do without that either, or get any gaming for that matter. needless to tell you, Shannon, that's the most successful economic development initiative in Indian country. And I shudder to think what Indian country would look like culturally, politically, physically, without the injection of $30 billion plus a year. And that's still not nearly enough. But at what risk? And Vine Deloria was asking 30 years ago, are we still peoples? Are we still nations, or are we becoming corporations? And that was pre-gaming. That was really in the face of self-determination dollars. But that question is now more profound than ever. There are some tribes that are absolutely run like Fortune 500 companies in terms of how they govern, their processes, their meetings, security at the door, security at the gate. Like, you would not even recognize them as a tribe anymore. They've become so corporate and so commercialized. And then when you do commit lateral violence against your own relatives or your relatives from another tribe that are just trying to exist, yeah, it does beg some pretty significant questions about what we've become and really what's our future.
And what do we still value? Are we still, yeah. If anyone in the chat rooms have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask Gabe some questions about this. I feel like I could talk to you about these issues for a long time. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and I had a question and I lost it. Did you have something, Roy?
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of catch-22 in this whole thing. It's like one thing feeds another. There's all this, all these things that are good and bad things within Indian country, that are operating amongst each other, and kind of forces that are fighting against each other in this whole thing. And I don't know how you even get out of it. It seems like a big conundrum, to be honest. And it was all something that was infused into Indian country's system. I don't know. It's a tricky issue. It definitely is a tricky issue.
Yeah, my hypothesis that I'm just sort of exploring intellectually and ideologically is can we just pause to reflect the next time we say, I'm an enrolled member of the Round Valley Indian Nation? Well, enrolled, is that really what I am? Member, in the context of the IRA, is that really who I am? Nation? Sure, sovereign, absolutely necessary for political survival. But have we always been nations or governments? And before I cash that per capita check from my CARES Act distribution, should I stop to think about the consequences of per capita as it's affected us now since 1790, and what it has done to our psychology, how it has monetized belonging, what it is causing us to do to each other by disenrollment, what it is causing us to do to each other by acknowledgement fights? It just seems like if we just pause to think about all these words we use and all their corresponding behaviors, and at least acknowledge that's not necessarily who we were and maybe who we must be today. I would like to think that might at least change some attitude or some ideology, or create some sort of more positive thinking about these things, rather than just assuming them as something they've always been when that's not the case, or looking past the destruction that they're causing us to cause to one another. Yeah.
Well, something that you said resonated with me, because until the Adayas tribe, my tribe, which is actually a clan of the Caddo Confederacy. The Caddos are now relocated to Oklahoma, and our clan stayed in Louisiana. And then we've always operated as a community. We've always operated as family and a community, but we've never had a structured government until they started seeking federal recognition. And we never had a real tribal government in place, other than just a hierarchy of the families. It was still a group that was together, but there was no official, he's Kadi, he's chief, until after they started recognition process. So, I mean, like you said, it's like, okay, did we really exist as a nation, or did we exist as we always have existed? Like you said, a societal group versus, any type of real entity.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you're just talking about your organic existence. And when you start putting titles on people or creating classes within your tribe or statuses within your tribe, I mean, that's colonization. Your idea of a chief. Well, a lot of tribes had chiefs appointed by the United States because they wanted to negotiate with somebody, at least ostensibly,
Favorable.
for manifestation.
Right.
And some of those chiefs were actually bought off. Some of those chiefs were promised annuities and actually per capita for the rest of their lives. I mean, this whole idea of nation, government, chief, council, citizen, those, generally speaking, and I'm risking, by saying this in generality, because there may be some nations or societies that had those as a part of their ways. But by and large, my understanding is those were not our institutions. Those are all colonial turned federal institutions designed in large part to dispossess of our lands or to deal with the Indian problem. And now here we are again, just subconsciously ascribing to chief or governor or president or council or senate or nation without any sort of historical understanding of the origins of those things and really their intentions in terms of destroying us.
Yeah. No, you're right, because we existed as a group. I mean, we had our dances and our powwows, and we had the heads of our families. We're all, the heads of our families, and they were all respected, and everybody went to them, and everybody, we were all, when not back home in Louisiana, not here where I'm at, but I mean, there was always a hierarchy, I guess you would call it, or a system of respect, not really a caste system or a governmental system, but there was a system in place of family and community. It had nothing to do with, like you said, all these different entities until the government stepped in and said, okay, well, we want to recognize you by the state. So then that's when my uncle was set up as Kadi, and all those things started to happen. And then now we have a governmental structure and enrollment and all those kinds of things, had to enroll my children and myself, and, and we never had any of that before. And that was just over the last, 35, 40 years.
So do you see any hope on the horizon, or where do you see this issue in the next 10 years?
Well, I vacillate between cynicism and hope.
Mm-hmm.
Some days I feel outright cynicism that we've become so commercialized, so racialized, so brainwashed, so assimilated, which is really what we're talking about. If you're going to do this to your own people, this is just a status of assimilation, where you're doing what non-Indian people have done to us for hundreds of years now. I feel cynicism in that we're dealing with the most powerful forces in the known world: the United States government, federalism, capitalism. All these things have been foisted upon us, and we're now doing unto ourselves what they couldn't do to us for the last several hundred years. And the forces are so strong that I just wonder if we'll eventually succumb to them. On the flip side, and I felt this as recent as this last week in getting this resolution together, and the National Native American Law Student Association Board considered supporting the resolution. And I had this profound conversation with the next generation of Indigenous lawyers on a Sunday afternoon, really at the same hour we're talking, a couple Sundays ago. And we just had this amazing conversation about all these same issues. And one of them asked me, well, is there, what if we do this? I mean, we all need to come get good jobs and get internships. And I said, well, one, I'm asking you to be brave, because that's what Indian country needs right now. But two, I'm going to be honest with you, there is risk. If you support this, you could suffer some repercussion professionally. And I just left it at that, and we had this great conversation. And then what I got a week later was this powerful letter, not some watered down resolution or letter of support. I mean, a head-on letter signed by every single member of this board.
Hmm.
And I'm like getting goosebumps just telling you about it. I felt such tremendous hope that they would not only take the issue head on of belonging, but they would all sign their names and affix their careers to it. That's what gives me hope. I think the next generation is more audacious than we would like to think we are. I think they're braver, more courageous. I think their conviction is intact. I think they know what they see is happening, even at the hands of their aunties and uncles and counselors, is not okay. And I have faith in them that they might put us on a better course than we're currently on at this moment. So again, I feel some cynicism at times, great cynicism at times, but I also have these moments of just outright hope on the people that are coming up behind us that see the world differently than we do. And I'm so grateful for that.
I feel the same way, Gabe. I do. I have a lot of cynicism because historically what we've seen and what, like what Shannon and we've spent our whole lives watching, all this happen, all of these things come about and disenrollment and children and what's been done to the tribes and not recognizing and all these other things that we've seen. I have a lot of cynicism and all that just historically, but when I see today's generation coming up and the things that they're doing, I just see a different attitude and a different energy in them. And it gives me hope too.
Yeah, me too. And the, what I'm so grateful for is there's people like you out there, Gabe, that knows that the next generation is supposed to stand on our shoulders. Yep. and go beyond what we were able to do for whatever reason. I mean, that's our position in life is to push the envelope as far as we possibly can and know that we're preparing the next generation to take it even further.
Yeah. And even Shannon's getting a little hope too, huh, Shannon?
Yeah, I'm having a little hope right now. Yeah. Every once in a while. And that's why it's so great to talk to Gabe and to see friends on the chat. And let's talk about prisoners' rights. Because I don't want I know that's close to your heart and it's another issue that I don't think we pay enough attention to.
So the first phone call I got in April of 2010 was from Mike Taylor, longtime lawyer for the Tulalip tribes and a hero in Northwest Indian legal ranks, especially in US v. Washington ranks. And I just left my law firm and he says, hey, I got this Tulalip Indian tribal member who was working for the State Department of Corrections. And it's strange, on Easter Sunday, he was trying to go in for sunrise ceremony with tobacco as a what they call a chaplain within the State Department of Corrections. And they would not let him in. And they took his tobacco and they fired him. He goes, and I think this is a violation of, generally speaking, religious freedoms. I said, well, let me talk to him. I'm not in my old law firm anymore, and I can really help anyone I want. Mm-hmm. So then I meet Wakadip. Robert Munger goes by Wakadip from Tulalip. He says it that way, Wakadip from Tulalip. And as it turned out, the State Department of Corrections that spring, keep in mind 2010 is right in the wake of the Great Recession. States are underwater because tax dollars had dissipated. They were doing some massive budget rebalancing. What our State Department of Corrections decided to do was take a pen to a matrix of religious freedoms or religious activities that our relatives could undertake in worship in aid of their spiritual rehabilitation. Meaning our relatives in state prisons, 12 of them in our state, were no longer allowed to sweat, no longer allowed to keep eagle feathers in a sacred items box. And that box is designed so that when the guards come through and rifle through your belongings, they cannot rifle through that box or desecrate your feather fan or your eagle feather or your other sacred belongings. They outlawed of all things fry bread at, powwows. They outlawed children attending powwows in these prisons. They just took a pen to the entire program. And little did he know, going up there that Sunday, he had basically been wiped out too. And the idea of bringing tobacco in, which had also been outlawed, was now contraband. They fired him. So I said, this stinks. Long story short, went to the tribes, who went to the governor, who went to the Department of Corrections secretary, and we got it all fixed politically. The secretary did not realize what someone on his watch had done for sake of balancing the budget. The governor certainly didn't know what happened on the secretary's watch. And they realized it was so egregious and such an affront to the First Amendment and the I can never say it, RLUIPA, the National Religious Land Use Institution Protection Act or something like that, that they put it all back. But what was born of that a couple of years later was this nonprofit that I now run called Hoyt. And Hoyt in Coast Lashutsi language means see you again. We never say goodbye. And the idea of Hoyt is to tell our relatives just that. We will never say goodbye to you. You are still us. You are still our people. And we know the great majority of you are going to come home at some point. So our charge is very narrow. It is to make sure that relatives in the state of Washington Department of Corrections or throughout the country can worship freely. They can sweat. They can engage in ceremony, be that pipe ceremony or otherwise. They can smudge. They can bead. They can prepare regalia for ceremony. They can have powwow with relatives. They can have their children at their powwow ceremonies. And that's what we've been focused on for the last 8 years, is just making sure that happened. And from time to time, we'll get a call from, a nonprofit in Hawaii, or we'll get a call from NARF, or we'll get a request for intercession in California or Geneva. And we will, with the assistance of law students and lawyers and the Native American Rights Fund and NCAI, we will intercede wherever we can to make sure that our relatives, not just Indigenous relatives here in the States, but throughout the world, are able to simply worship in order to rehabilitate themselves. And that too has been a gift.
Incredible. Again, sometimes in tribal nation advocacy, we're so concerned with the tribe that we lose our people, our individuals. I see a connection here with the work that you're doing, Gabe, is remembering who the people are. And this is another one of those issues. So what is there nationally federal law that allows us to worship in prison? Is that taken away, or what rights do we have if we're in jail? Is it different depending on the state you're in, or what jurisdiction?
Well, what I tell the relatives I counsel is, sadly, when a jury of your peers or a judge convicted you of a crime and sentenced you to time, you lost, practically speaking, the right to worship in a perfect way. Meaning, however you worshiped in the free world, you don't have that anymore. Mm-hmm. There will be security concerns. There will be penological concerns. There will be impairments in terms of, the time, place, and manner in which you can worship. But my job and our goal is to make it as close to what you experienced outside as possible. Like sweat lodge, like change of seasons, like pipe ceremony, like smudging. It's guaranteed by the First Amendment, but it really depends day in and day out on who's the corrections guard, the superintendent, who's the corrections secretary. So our success has been in making relationships and friendships with prison officials, befriending and creating kinship with superintendents and religious coordinators and the secretary of the Department of Corrections, at least in the state of Washington. And so when there's a problem, and there will always be a problem, some of it is discrimination, some of it is just mishap. There's always challenges that we try to resolve it just as friends trying to solve a problem because we have a relationship that we've nurtured, rather than running to court under the First Amendment. That's a long way of saying, yeah, we have the First Amendment. Yeah, we have this religious land use act, but what has carried the day for us for the last 8 years is goodwill and political relationships with the tribes in particular, and then just human relationship with people that are making decisions, and just explaining to them, look, you put yourself in your Sunday mass as a Catholic and imagine yourself being strip searched on your way to mass. Or imagine the holy water somehow being an issue before you blessed yourself with it. Or imagine not getting the sacrament of communion. Imagine your family not sitting with you in the front pew. Imagine your children not sitting with you in the front pew as you're worshiping. Now imagine that in sweat lodge or in powwow or in pipe ceremony. And that's how we sort of translate it beyond the First Amendment, just putting them in a similar situation that they can relate to so they can understand what our relatives are going through and then help us sort of solve the problem. That's really how we've done it.
Wow. What do you think of that, Roy?
Well, we've had a lot of outreach out here. And I forget his name now. With Allocation out here in California, they that's what they used to do. They were part of the gathering. They used to go to the prisons and actually take ceremony there and help conduct ceremony for the indigenous people that were incarcerated. So I was familiar with those groups. I haven't spoke with them in a long time, but I know that that outreach has been out in California for a long time now.
Yeah, California is the single worst state offender in this conversation.
The worst?
Yeah, they are the worst penological system when it comes to our religious freedoms, and I would say any non-Western group's religious freedoms.
Wow.
So I wish the type of dynamics I'm describing here in Washington existed in California. They don't, but there have been a lot of good lawyers for a lot of years fighting to allow the opportunities you're describing and to make things better for them.
Wow. I know it was a group that would literally have to go into the prisons and lobby themselves in basically in order to conduct these ceremonies. And I don't know exactly what they did. I know they were bringing pipe ceremony there, but I don't think there was sweat lodge or any of that.
Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, and you have a full-time job. I mean, you are the head of or a partner at a law firm that you've got some great people working at, and you've been able to really do some great work there. I've got to, at some point in time, where are we at? Talk about you, Gabe, because I remember a few of us gals sitting together. I'm not going to name names, and I don't know if anyone is here, part of that gal group that we had in law school.
Oh boy.
We'd go, Gabe is going to be an attorney? Really? What do you think he's going to do? Is he really? So we always kind of wondered, what Gabe would end up doing. We knew you and our professor, Rob Williams, were close. And so you were getting a lot of mentorship. We were very happy about that. But I think it's just because you have such a warm heart. You have a great sense of humor. I got to tell you, all y'all, that Gabe is being really serious and professional right now. But he was always a crack up too. So we wondered how you'd turn out, Gabe. You did really well. In fact, I think you've done better than most of us, and that we're real proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
Been able to accomplish.
Well, I wasn't very sure either what was going to happen when we were in Tucson together. As you know, I was partying and not studying as much as I probably should have. Took myself seriously at times, but not seriously at all at others. At that time, that was a hard time in my life. I just lost an aunt to suicide. My family had all sorts of problems that were sort of converging while I was away, which made it hard. That was the first time I was away from home. And during that time, my aunt had that happen. My grandpa was basically of old age dying. My mom was actually in prison my entire time in law school, which is why the prisoners' rights work is just this beautiful thing. My dad and mom both did time in the state prison system that I'm now working in. But I had a very, very tough 3 years there. It was in many respects the best 3 years of my life, like I've told you, but it was also the hardest 3 years of my life. And I was not very sure of myself. In fact, I wasn't probably sure of myself until about 5 years into my practice. And for me, what was life-changing, and I mentioned this to you yesterday, Shannon, and at least alluded to my sobriety to Roy earlier, was when I got sober. That the light bulb went off in my life in just about every way, intellectually, legally, spiritually, in terms of self-confidence, motivation, intellect, when I she sober in 2012. And it coincided with my aunt's suicide. She actually didn't pass when I was in law school. Come to think of it, she was more just going through some really, really tough times that were sort of causing a lot of harm to our family and ultimately harm to herself. But what sort of took me from unsure of myself and really lost, candidly, in law school, to sort of sure of myself and focused, and then to successful, not to brag, but, you know, I'm proud to be successful. It's been my sobriety for now 18 years. So yeah, that in terms of me, that's one of the things I'm most proud of in life.
Yeah, that really is incredible. And you share so many, I mean, that story is shared by so many of us who've come from families that have been, well, dysfunctional. I hate to use that word because we're all screwed up, right? I mean, that's just part of being human. But coming from families that have just suffered a lot and suffered a lot of trauma, and how you pull yourself out of that. You know, Roy has a similar story. And I know when I was going to law school, my matriarch, my grandmother, passed away during law school, which really made law school completely difficult because she was the reason I was there. She was the reason why I wanted to work on these issues and make life better. So for people like her, right? So it's really interesting. And I find on our Red Hoop Talk show that we hear from people that we've all struggled with something in our lives. We've all found some way to stay close to culture, and we've all come back to work either for our nations or for Indian country in general. And we're doing work to help support one another. And to me, it's man, we're a damn inspiring group of people.
Yeah, just look at TikTok.
Are you on TikTok yet, Gabe?
No, in fact, I think, as I told you, I'm getting off of social media.
Yeah.
You got to get.
So you're not going to go to TikTok? You should try TikTok.
I did not work 12 steps for my sobriety. I just went cold turkey, but I am working 12 steps right now on getting away from my addiction to social media. It is hard.
So
you're so good at it, though, Gabe. Your social media is so good in all your postings.
Well, it's how I've developed this law firm or marketed it for the last 10 years. I went from having a 5-figure marketing budget at the big firm to nothing. And I discovered social media. That's how we've marketed ourselves. But then I saw The Social Dilemma the other day, and I've been sort of watching social media for the last several months, and I'm just like, this is not good. And I started to realize, especially on Twitter, which can get really snarky,
yes,
that I was leaving Twitter disturbed, and I was feeling negative feelings after being on Twitter that I just don't want to feel anymore. And then to some extent on Facebook as well. So again, I'm working my program, but I for my own serenity, I kind of need to move away from it.
So in defense of social media platform TikTok, and it's become a joke on here because I'm always talking about it, but it's different. It's a different social media. I'm telling everybody now that native TikTok is, I'm telling you, it is going to be one of the biggest developments. It's going to be one of the biggest showcasers of that generation that you're talking about, that I think that Indian country has ever seen. Because like Facebook, for instance, Facebook is all of your friends, family, close friends and family and associates. all sharing their dirty laundry and pictures of their kids and their meals that they ate. You know, that's Facebook, and it can get kind of like boring and mundane. And then there's Twitter, and that's where everybody fights with everybody else, and they get on there and screw you and screw your issue, and no, mine's better than your issue, and then they shit post each other and all that stuff. That's what goes on Twitter. It's very, very, it's an ugly environment, to be honest. But then there's TikTok, and then there's native TikTok. So TikTok is where you know, it started out with a bunch of gals dancing and to music and little short, you know, blurbs. Well, Indian country has taken a hold of it and started to put culture on there. Little bits and blurbs of culture, little 30-second to 1 minute blurbs of culture from young people, old too, but comedy, culture as far as stories, dancing, pop culture, you know, talking res talk, and there's a lot of just these little just things, words that you pull from the res that you hear like in the streets on the res, like, you know, the whole thing about Cheetos and being deadly and all these things that they're talking about on the res, you know, the res language, and they're sharing this on TikTok. And you can really see what you were talking about, the generation, the energy that's coming off of these people. And yes, there's comedy, and yes, there's culture, but you can see the power in their minds coming through it also, because they're not really, I mean, you can get involved in the shit posting and talking to one another, but if you're just scrolling through native TikTok, and once you start following one and another, your feed just gets filled with these people. And before you know it, you're watching different stories from different peoples and in different tribes and different comedy skits. I mean, it's just the most entertaining thing that I think that Indian country has today is native TikTok.
What about us?
I'm sorry. We don't compete with native TikTok right now. It's the fast. What I think is really cool is that it's like we do a show, we sit here and talk for 2 hours, you know, to our guests, and we talk about an issue or two or three, and we get engaged in the chat room, and we have dialogue and conversation. But these things are showcases of human beings and their spirituality, their politics, their culture, their thoughts, their comedy, and it's just one little blurb after another, and it's really, really interesting.
But let's ask Roy. Have you done a TikTok video yet?
I haven't, because I don't participate yet. I just haven't jumped into it yet.
But I'm gonna give you a timeout. So you cannot talk about TikTok ever again on this show.
The entertainment value that I get from watching it
until you come up with your own TikTok video, and you're gonna show it on Red Hoop Talk.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
You need to walk the TikTok. And now you're talking the TikTok. Let's see the walk.
The walk.
That's what
but to your point, Gabe, I feel the same way about social media. It can be so draining. And so, but like I said, this thing that I've been watching, these young people, the native, what I've been watching within the native community on TikTok has been amazing. It hasn't been, it's energized me versus drained me, because Facebook and Twitter and all of the other platforms have just drained me. But I get energized from native TikTok. I really do. And I think that a lot of Indian countries should be out there watching it and participating in it, because it's sharing. It's really like kind of part of our culture, how we share with one another. And I think it's our platform. I really do. I think it's what's going to take off, what's going to energize us, what's going to get movements started. I'm telling you, mark my words. Mark my words.
I know there's some stuff I'm going to miss. Like, I think I got tagged by one of you in today's Twitter about the show, and so I saw that. And the next thing I saw that brother in New Mexico who was dancing in the street last night when Biden won.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
No.
Well, awesome. This is off of Shannon's.
No, not that.
She put that up there.
I did not put that up there.
Anyway, watch it. That clip is awesome. It just makes you feel awesome. Just like, the brother on the skateboard with the ocean spray, like that kind of stuff. I know I'm going to miss.
Yeah. Well, now they're spoofing on that. And now there's even natives that are spoofing on that, and they're like, they'll be riding the skateboard and the skateboard breaks or something because he's a big dude, right? And they're just doing all kinds of stuff. It's really, really funny.
All right, someone give me the link to this Albuquerque dancer.
Yeah, post it. It's epic. Jim Diamond, post the link.
Yeah, post the link, Jim.
Let's see. I'll find him. Albuquerque dancer is what he is.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Do you have it up there?
That's 20 seconds I've seen this election.
Let's see.
I know it's on Twitter.
Yeah, it's got to be everywhere. I've liked all the memes about something else. I've liked that. We've taken that and we've taken it back. Instead of, there's a little.
Oh no, that's not Shannon.
What are you doing?
Whoa,
Shannon.
That was not me.
Here's the thing about something else. Are we really 6%, or were we just grouped in with a bunch of other people?
Well, in what state was that supposed to be?
I thought it was nationally.
Was it nationally?
So we're not 6%. So I'm like, all right,
percent.
Who are they really talking about?
Yeah.
All right, Roy, you got the Twitter from Jim Diamond.
Here we go.
Down there? Hold on.
Cut and paste that, Roy.
I got it. Oh.
Well, regardless, we've kind of taken it over, and when you think, well, we're about 6% in Arizona, right? So for some reason, I was thinking that it was coming out of Arizona. I mean, Navajo Nation, 97% of the Navajo Nation voted for Biden, and so there's been some really great articles about how we have been changing the vote in certain states, and it seems to be real empowering because it's actually getting out in the media now, and there's this article about how Indigenous voters swung some of the elections, and it shows there's a great picture of Arizona and where the tribal lands are, and then a picture right next to it that shows where the blue and where the red areas are in Arizona, and every reservation in Arizona is blue. So it's just really interesting to have that visual. Oh, and so Roy decided to leave because
Hey, Roy.
What happened to Roy, man? All right, we've got to get. I can't cut and paste this. Roy, where'd you go?
I'm trying to do the same. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can. Yeah, you can't cut and paste. Let me see.
We can't cut and paste from the thing. That kind of sucks.
Find it, Roy. We're going to end on that note.
I'll get it. There we go.
No, on TikTok, there's been my favorite thing on TikTok is there's this young man with long hair, and as he's talking, he's braiding his hair, and he's talking about being bullied. Because he has long hair, but he says it with conviction and about, this is why I have long hair. This is why I braid my hair. And he's going through this story, and it's just, it really has been TikTok a really great place for storytelling and education. And it's growing there. TikTok reached out to the association because they wanted to help support us to create content for TikTok. Cool. And so I think there is a place there that is a better format for education and storytelling than, what we got so far. So maybe don't give up on it completely, Gabe. If you find something that feels good.
I'm not even on TikTok yet, but maybe that's the one I'll have to explore and hang on to.
And then if there's also other weird things what?
There he is.
Is that him?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you got your volume on?
I think, let me double check here. Hold on a second.
You have your audio on?
I might not. Hold on. Let me pull that down.
Look at that 4.4 million views already.
Oh my God.
There we go. Yeah, I saw this. This was actually on TikTok. Somebody shared a TikTok
There you
on
go.
Twitter. So just to
TikTok
let
is-
everybody know, this is a TikTok, not a Twitter. Somebody posted a TikTok on Twitter.
On Twitter.
So hold on a second. Let me.
All right.
Yeah,
Woo, yeah.
that's so good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, watch it one more time. Oh, never mind. Anyway, so good. Best 20 seconds I've seen on social media in a while.
Yeah, it was. So and TikTok is full of that.
There you go.
Full of it. Full of it.
And so is Roy.
I'm going to get everybody on native TikTok because they are like they want you guys there. They want you there.
I haven't seen. So you haven't made any videos, Roy. None of our friends on the chat have made any TikTok videos. If y'all do, let us know and we'll play it on here. So again, Roy, this is the last show. You are not allowed to talk about TikTok until you do your own.
Okay.
Whatever.
I will do my own TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I will do my own TikTok.
And then you'll be a credible source of information.
I'm not on either. What's that? Lee's running says native TikTok. I'm not on either. This where I can listen to stories about Native Americans. You can listen to little short stories, watch videos like we just played. And there's a lot of jokes. There's a lot of cultural stories, very quick, very fast, little blurbs and comedy skits, and it's really fun.
And some good humor. Okay, Gabe, you're going to tell me what your favorite class in law school was. Go.
I wasn't very good at law school, Shannon, in terms of the academic
class
part.
that you hated in law school.
I didn't like first year.
Oh,
like,
God, first
I
year.
didn't like any of them.
And so you encourage people to go to law school? Like, do you?
No, I mean, law school was just really hard, like I said, for me personally. And it was very hard for me intellectually. I didn't get it. Like, people would like barely go to class, barely study, show up and get A's.
Yeah.
At least in the first year I went to class, I did all these insane outlines. And then I didn't understand like how to take the test or maybe what they were asking. And I was content to get B's and I got some C's that I was pretty bummed out by, but I just didn't feel like I was getting it. Some people got it immediately. It took me all of law school and into my practice several years before I finally started getting it.
Yeah.
So I loved Rob's classes. I loved all the indigenous studies that we learned. Those were probably my favorite collectively. But a lot of the stuff, especially my first year, I really, really struggled just understanding what was being taught, or at least the way they were teaching me to think. It took me many years to sort of finally figure that out. So that's kind of why I'm answering it the way I'm answering it.
Yeah. No, we have a lot of similarities, Gabe. So, I mean, I felt the same way. I felt like I had about 5 or 7 years after law school where I kind of had to relearn who I was. Like I felt like law school took something out of me. It taught me to be critical in a way that I didn't like. And I had to come back to myself and who I wanted to be, practicing law or whatever it was I was going to do. But yeah, I tried really hard to get it in law school. And that's why I think I ended up taking more discussion academic classes than actual practical classes. And I'm kind of disappointed that I did that, because where I really learned practicing law was, after law school and getting your hands in things and dealing with issues. But it was hard. And, even today, when people, oh, I want to go to law school, and I'm like, really? Are you sure that's what you want? Because I think there's this idea of us legal warriors out there, and there's some great legal warriors out there in Indian country. But it is a really difficult profession to be in. We need more attorneys in-house with tribes and helping the people. But the law firm is a difficult place to be. I don't know that it's gotten any different or better since I was in it, or when you were didn't have your own practice. I'm sure you've made changes to create a culture that is what you'd like to see in a law firm with your firm.
Yeah, law firms are hard because they're for-profit enterprises, period.
Mm-hmm.
That changes the practice of law, and it changes the relationship with clients, and it changes the way you behave as a lawyer and as a professional. I mean, you are beholden to billable hours, to billed hours, to a bunch of other arithmetic, and ultimately to profit.
Yeah.
And that's not always consistent with certainly your client's best interests or whatever is just or right. In fact, it can be antithetical to those things.
Yeah.
So right back to where we started from on the show. Right?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm grateful for is, my law firm, we're able to help people who cannot afford us at all, who can maybe afford us a little bit, or who can completely afford us. And what I'm even more gratified by is I have Native Nation clients that stick with us and will pay us our rates and pay us monthly, on time, all the time. And they know what they're helping us do by sticking with us is helping people that can't afford us. And that's what makes me feel so good. I've actually had counselors tell me, we love you for you, but we also love what you do for other people. And we know that by helping your law firm and you helping us, it will create opportunity for you to help other people. And that's just the most gratifying way to run a law firm. When I know I have Native nations that are basically helping through my law firm underwrite pro bono or indigent representation for people who can't even afford lawyers. And then again, there are clients in between that, if we want to help, I don't have to ask permission to help them. I don't have to write a memo to a board of directors. There's really no deliberation. It's just a gut check of your heart, check of your, how you're feeling, and decide to help. And that's immensely gratifying and hugely liberating too.
Mm. And that's so awesome. I can't even believe that. More of our, I'm sure there's some other Indigenous law firms that do the same, but they're very few and far between. Let's see. Juan, we don't know you. Where are you coming from, Juan? He says he couldn't be a lawyer because I'd be a prosecutor and pretty ruthless. We need you too. We need some ruthless attorneys every once in a while, right?
You have to be. I mean, in civil rights work, you have to be ruthless.
And that's what I tell a lot of people who talk to me about law school is I say, you go to school for 3 years and the whole point of that law school is to turn you into an asshole. Yeah, so as soon as you get good at being an asshole, you can be very successful as an attorney. Mm-hmm. And where you need to balance that as a human being is when you can turn off that assholeness. And be a human being, and so that you don't treat your family that way and you don't treat your friends that way, but you use that power to be ruthless sometimes.
And sometimes that little switch gets stuck on the on position, huh?
Yes, I've met those attorneys. I've met some of those attorneys, and I won't say anyone's name, but they're out there, and there's some really horrible people who are attorneys and who are Native attorneys who use that power to cause dissension, to cause argument between tribes, between factions within tribes, for the, I guess, for the almighty dollar. I don't know.
It's always
but that always has bothered me about the practice of law in Indian country is there are attorneys who make their living by creating problems.
There sure are.
Yes. And we'll just walk away from that one because we all know who they are, but we can't say their names.
I don't know who they are.
Karma will work. So what else? Hey, does anyone have any questions of Gabe? Because I feel like we're starting to kind of wind down here a little bit. So if you have a question for Gabe, ask it now. And you don't have to keep it to prisoners' rights or disenrollment or these issues we've been talking about. Hey, he's a all-time famous lawyer, so ask him anything.
All-time famous lawyer. He's got a lawyer cards, trading cards, right?
And go ahead.
No. Gabe was when we showed the dancer. I seen Gabe was trying to wind it down. He said, "We're going to end with that," and then we kept going.
Yeah,
and
no,
we started talking about lawyers.
No, it's all good. I just thought that'd be an epic way to end.
Well, I've got Shannon. I've got all of Shannon's social media posts here that we can end with. I mean, you should see some of the stuff that she's got in there. Oh my goodness, Shannon. Right. I thought the yard signs were good.
Well, I knew Shannon in law school when she used to ride a Harley Davidson, and we agreed we're not going to tell a lot of stories about each other. But that was my everlasting impression of her riding to and from law school on a Harley. Mm-hmm. And Kennedy,
I taught her that.
Kennedy was a bad bitch in law school. She just rocked it. She just did her own thing. She was her own woman. But I just got to say, and I've told her this privately, I'm going to tell her, but I'm very, very proud of Shannon and what she's doing now, especially with this association that she has revitalized. The oldest intertribal organization in the country of almost 100 years. And she's just brought new life to it. And she's brought values to the forefront of these conversations, indigenous values. And we just need more of that and more conversations like these for all the reasons we're talking about. So I just want to recognize you, Shannon, for who you are and what you do, and tell everyone how proud I am of you.
Thank you, Gabe. That's
why she do what she do.
Yes.
All right, Roy. Now mess it up. What are you gonna? What did I do?
I'm not gonna say anything. I just want to give Gabe a way out because he was like, just keep talking about lawyers. You can only bash Indian lawyers for so long, Shannon.
That's true, but Roy's probably having a hard time with all this lawyer conversation. He's just like, oh, these damn lawyers. Shannon, lawyers to the.
I understand the necessity of it all. Yeah. I just know that it's just a gosh. Once you start getting into the law, we just start things just get turn into minutia. It just like, I don't know. It just.
This is what I want to know. I want to know who's in the political machine who's going to be appointed. I know there's been some talk about a native appointee to the Department of Interior. So what do you think, Gabe? Someone going to appoint you to anything yet? Are you going into politics anytime soon?
There is no way any DC Indian would ever support any appointment of Gabe Galanda to any executive branch office. I threaten their status quo, and that's just not what they're interested in. But I do hear that Representative Deb Haaland is being advanced by Indian country to become Secretary of Interior. That would be great.
That would be great.
I hear Paulette Jordan, who ran a very noble campaign in Idaho, but fell short, is being considered for assistant secretary. I've heard other names kicked around DC, sort of usual suspects, and other folks who served in the Obama administration are interested in going back to work for the Biden administration, and that would be great. So I'm confident, especially given the credit that is being given to Indian country for the support Joe Biden got.
Yes.
The hard work that a lot of people did on that campaign.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
a lot of the voting where it came from Arizona, from all over the country, a lot Indian country was being acknowledged. I seen on mainstream media.
Yeah.
Van Jones was actually talking about Indian country and how it came through for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And you know, it was neat to see that on the mainstream, actually, them talking about Indian country. So way to go. I seen a lot of people in the chat room were talking about how they heard too that, you know, Indian country was influential in this election.
Yeah. But there were a lot of natives that were on the Biden bandwagon when he was not,
Right.
you know, perceived to be the candidate or the nominee. And to their credit, they rode with him. And I hope those people end up with appointments if they care to. But there's no question we're going to see, just like we did with the Obama administration, and maybe more than that with that administration, a lot of indigenous folks in this administration. That's going to be exciting to watch.
It is. It is.
Absolutely.
Now, Shannon, are you gonna let me say I told you so?
Why?
Remember, you were so worried about this. You were like, "No, he's this dang guy's gonna get it again."
I was really worried.
You were very pessimistic, weren't you?
We
Yes,
were all worried.
I wasn't worried at all. I kept telling Shannon, don't worry. It's in the bag. It's in the bag.
I'll listen to you next time once you get your TikTok videos out.
So Shannon was so excited. I got to share this last one, Shannon.
Okay.
This one was over the top hilarious. I thought you really, really, really went over the top with this one. That was really good.
Yes. Love those memes. Love those memes. You know,
Shannon was memeing. She was memeing all week.
I don't do memes. The only memes I liked with Biden are the ones with him and Obama. I love those memes. Well, we're wrapping it up. I can see the look on Gabe's eyes. He's like, I've been sitting too long.
Gabe, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you. And keep fighting the good fight,
Yes.
brother. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you both. Thanks for your kind words. I love the conversation. This is the kind of conversations we need to be having all over the place. Just real, honest conversation. So thanks for facilitating it. I've told Shannon I've watched the show a few times now, and it's great to witness that kind of conversation happening here. So thank you.
We'll keep trying to up it as often as we can. And we'll bring you on again when we start to have some breakthroughs on some of the stuff we talked about. Since we created more problems than we solved.
I'd love to come back.
Right on. All right, Gabe, thank you. And you have a good one.
All right.
We're going to bring you down. You can wait for us if you want to for after the show debriefing. That's what we do, by the way, everyone.
I'll hang on.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Gabe. We'll see you, bud. Hey,
Show, do you know this was show number 30?
30.
30, just like the years of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act is celebrating its 30th anniversary and our 30th show.
Wow.
Whatever that means, I don't know.
We should have made that kind of like the theme of the show.
But we had Gabe on.
But we could have added Gabe to that conversation. I'm sure that he had a whole bunch of stuff he could have talked about it.
Yeah, but I feel like I talk about it all the time.
We do. But it's a big issue. It's a big issue.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But so our 30th,
how it relates to what he was talking about, the DNA evidence where you had to go, I mean, gosh, you got to go back in and start digging up a relative just to get DNA tests.
I can't believe any tribe would have one of their members do that. That's
insane. That's asking for trouble right there. That's asking for trouble.
So next week, we're going to have Carly Badheart Bull on as our guest. She's Native, worked for the Bush Foundation. She now works for the Native Ways Federation, and we're going to talk about what that is next week on Sunday. National Congress of American Indians is meeting this week virtually. And the association's going to be there to talk about religious freedoms, work, repatriation efforts. We're going to be helping to support Gabe on his disenrollment, his tribal citizenship protection work, and we're going to be talking about it more on Sunday. Roy, what are you going to be doing this week?
This week?
Oh, well, Have you started your new job?
No, that is going to be next Monday. I will start, but this week is all going to be prep week. Getting all the last honeydews done around here. I have a flooded backyard. It rained finally in California.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of honeydews this week, and then it's regular job after that. Crazy, huh?
And how's your grandpa doing?
My grandfather is doing okay.
Yeah.
He is definitely mourning the loss of his 66 and a half year marriage to my grandmother. So he's definitely having a hard time with that. But for being a 92-year-old indigenous man, he's doing really well. He's doing really well.
Good. Well, we're sending him love and our prayers and our smoke.
And we'll be I'm going to see him tomorrow. I'm taking him some food. My wife is going to make him some food so we can fill up his freezer, and he'll have all kinds of goodies.
Bring him some flowers. Bring him some color.
Yeah. I don't know if he really. You know what we did? We got him a new TV.
Oh, there you go. There's some color.
We got him a new TV. He had one of the box, the old box ones, you know.
Yeah.
And you couldn't hardly see it anymore. So we're like, hey, look, we got him this. It was just a small flat screen, and oh man, that thing's the most wonderful thing he's ever seen in his life. You know, he couldn't believe it. He didn't believe they made stuff like that. It's so big. It's like a 40-inch, you know. And he's like, he just thinks it's the biggest thing in the world. You know, my grandson just got me the biggest TV on the planet. You know, it's this 40-inch flat.
Hey, we have to thank JD. Always here. We're so grateful that you're here.
Yes, JD. Always participating, always asking great questions, and always supporting us. We appreciate you.
And we probably should.
Everybody in the chat room, by the way.
We have some really good people. Thank you all for coming in. Thanks, Jim, for coming with us today. And I guess we should close this.
Yep. And who are we brought to everyone by?
We are brought to you by the Association on American Indian Affairs, the oldest nonprofit serving Indian countries since 1922. I got to quit doing that like a car sales.
Oh.
But anyway,
all right, everybody.
For coming with us. Roy, why don't you push the button and we'll end the broadcast.
You guys,
have a great
next week. Carly, Braveheart Bull, right? See you next week. Bye-bye.